Hey, Dr. Daniel here, and I wanted to create a video sharing with you 10 physiological reasons why you're not losing fat. Now, this video is really intended for those of you who have already dialed in on diet and lifestyle. In other words, you're already eating a whole foods diet, you're getting plenty of physical activity, you're conscious about stress management, and you understand the importance of getting enough sleep every night. These are really the foundations to health, and quite honestly, if you're not doing those things and expecting to get a healthy body composition, it's going to be very difficult without addressing the basics. And so I consider that the non-negotiables. Now, this video, again, is designed for those individuals who are already doing that. If you're not following a healthy diet, if you're consuming lots of processed foods, if you're eating out quite a bit, doing a lot of takeout, doing fast foods, drinking sodas every day, if you're drinking alcohol, if you're staying up late, if you're not getting enough physical activity, then obviously there's a lot of groundwork that you need to do before expecting any major body composition changes. So again, I'm really creating this video more for those of you who have already dialed in on a healthy lifestyle, and yet you're challenged or still having problems losing the fat or losing the weight, at least with the amount of work that you're doing. Now, like I said, there are 10 physiological reasons why you're not losing fat. And the first reason is typically going to be glucose or insulin dysregulation. Now, with glucose, of course, a lot of times we think about chronically elevated glucose, as in the case of a type 2 diabetic, right? If you have a lot of glucose in your bloodstream, it could be because of overconsumption. So obviously, if we're eating too much combined with not enough physical activity, that's going to cause glucose to go up. That chronically elevated glucose is going to cause insulin spikes. Insulin is a hormone that drives glucose down, but insulin also increases fat storage. So it's important to understand that relationship. So again, if you're eating too many calories, right, then that's going to be problem number one. And again, you could be eating a whole foods diet, but you're still getting way too many calories for the amount of work that you're doing. Now, for my functional medicine practice, I recommend that all of my patients get a personal glucometer or a continuous glucose monitor in order to see what their glucose levels are doing throughout the day. And again, we can agree that you're eating a healthy diet, but depending on the types of foods you're eating and the combinations of those foods, it could be abnormally elevating your glucose, causing insulin spikes, again, disturbing fat loss. Another problem, though, is not just chronically elevated glucose, but we could have instances where people have reactive hypoglycemia or dysglycemia, meaning you're moving from periods of high glucose as well as low glucose. And those massive fluctuations between highs and lows could also be contributing to dysfunction, resulting in abnormal fat loss or an inability to lose weight. So again, it's a very important metric in order for you to determine whether or not this is contributing to your fat loss inhibition or goals. So that would be number one, is glucose and insulin regulation. Number two is going to be stress hormone imbalances. So stress hormones, typically we're going to think of cortisol, and cortisol is a hormone that is normal within our body. It's supposed to be there. There's a lot of positive benefits for cortisol, but if we have unresolved emotional trauma, if we have physical trauma that's occurring, and we're constantly, just like insulin, if you're constantly spiking insulin, if you're constantly spiking cortisol, cortisol also has a lot of negative effects, especially whenever it's chronically elevated, meaning it's elevated for long periods of time. That is absolutely going to disturb your weight loss goals, or more importantly, fat loss or fat reduction. Third on the list is going to be digestive dysfunctions. Now, I like to say, step one, of course, is eating a healthy diet, but that's step one. Step two is going to be, are you fully digesting and absorbing the nutrients from that whole foods diet? So it's great when you eat healthy food. That's step one. But if you're not fully digesting and absorbing those foods, you're going to be running into nutritional deficiency issues, which are going to run into metabolic problems. You're going to be creating a lot of inflammation because the cells aren't getting the fuel that they need in order to function properly. So digestive disruption or dysfunctions can contribute quite a bit to fat storage or weight loss dysfunctions or weight loss resistance. And another issue with digestive dysfunctions is that you could have parasites, you could have fungal overgrowth, you could have bacterial infections, and all of these can increase inflammation. And of course, chronically elevated inflammation, again, is just going to disturb your fat loss goals. Number 4 on the list is going to be a thyroid imbalance. Certainly, this is a very common thing to think about when you have a lot of people who have been dieting and eating healthy and they're not losing weight. They typically think that they have a thyroid issue. And certainly the thyroid gland is what revs up our metabolism. So absolutely, if you're not burning fat, it could be a thyroid problem. But when we talk about thyroid imbalances, it's very important to tease out whether or not the thyroid gland is dysfunctional, or is there something else happening within the system? Is it environmental? Is it nutritional deficiencies? Is it your stress? Is it liver? Is it a gut dysfunction? All of those mechanisms could be creating thyroid issues, but it's not a thyroid problem itself. It's just the hormone signaling. So again, you have to really do a good job of investigating to see what exactly is happening. Beyond that, additional hormones are going to be your sex hormones, such as testosterone. Absolutely, in men, testosterone deficiency could contribute to fat loss impairment or an inability to burn fat. Same thing with women. We also want to pay attention to estradiol. So your estrogens, you want to look at progesterone. So all the sex hormones can absolutely be playing into fat loss resistance. Now, thyroid imbalance, gut issues, and sex hormone imbalance could all be related to the next factor, which is the 6th reason why we can't lose weight, and that is going to be toxic load or liver dysfunction. And I bring all of this up because your liver is the primary processing center to metabolize hormones. It has direct connections with your gut health or digestive system function. It plays a major role also in thyroid. And so if your liver is sluggish, if there's something impacting the liver, whether that's because of an infection, again, it could be a virus that's impacting the liver. It could be toxic load, so environmental toxins in our body that are contributing to liver dysfunction. Those are things that can easily be assessed if you know what you're doing when you look at blood chemistry. Now, when we talk about toxic load, it's important to understand that already in our environment, when we're born from day one, scientists have estimated that we have on average 200 chemicals that are circulating in our blood supply that can impact our brain and it can impact metabolism. So it's important to understand that we pretty much start off already with dysfunction. And so then, of course, as we grow up and depending on the type of life we're living, it could certainly contribute to additional issues. And the 7th reason why you can't burn fat is going to be immune dysregulation. Now, when we talk about immune system, you could have a weakened immune system, so insufficiency of your immune system, meaning you lack the basic machinery to be able to respond to infections or various stimuli in your environment. You could also have an immune system that is hyperreactive for whatever reason, and it could be because of exposure to things. It could be because of something that's happening within your digestive system. So again, there's a lot of little loops and connections that you have to make when you're evaluating these things. But again, a weakened immune system, a hyperreactive immune system, and then number 3 would be autoimmunity, which is basically when your body's attacking itself. And all 3 of those can contribute to increased states of inflammation, which absolutely inflammation is going to impede fat burning. The next section is going to be brain chemistry imbalances. So brain chemical imbalances, absolutely, we all know that the brain is what's running the show. The brain is the central processing unit for your entire body, right? So every single physiological reaction that happens in the body is going to be directed by the signaling from the brain. And if your brain is not able to properly communicate with the rest of the body, you're going to have some pretty major issues, including fat loss suppression or inability to burn fat. Number 9 on the list is going to be cellular dysfunction. When we talk about cellular dysfunction, again, this parlays into all the other things we've already talked about. If you're not eating the right foods, you're not going to get the right nutrition. If you are eating the right foods, but you're not able to digest those nutrients, you're not going to get the right nutrition. And ultimately, we're talking about getting the right nutrition into your cells. Your cells have three primary components that they need to survive. They need glucose, so you need to be able to get enough glucose into the cell. They need micronutrients, so they need all these nutrients in order to perform the billions of biochemical reactions that are happening every single minute. And then they also need mitochondria, which are the energy, the powerhouses of your cells. If any of those are dysfunctional, the cell's going to become dysfunctional, and therefore physiology becomes dysfunctional. Last on the list is going to be mind-body issues, and this is very important. We all know that our physiology is dictated by our psychology. In other words, this is a very strong understanding that we now have in the scientific literature, that what we think of ourselves, we become. And so it's very important to understand that if you've addressed all the fundamentals of health, you're eating a healthy diet, you're exercising right, you've ruled out glucose, insulin dysregulation, you know your sex hormones are healthy, it's not a thyroid problem, your liver's doing good, you know that your brain chemistry is good and your immune system's well balanced. Well, the last part of this is going to be the connections that you have with yourself. And I can't tell you how many times I've had patients where they've started undergoing cognitive behavioral therapy. They've addressed some of the long-standing emotional traumas that they've had. And then all of a sudden, without changing anything, they start to normalize in terms of their body composition. So the power of our emotions and our psychological well-being cannot be discounted when we're talking about weight loss. And absolutely, it is a physiological reason why you might not be able to burn fat. Over the next few days, few weeks, I'm going to be writing quite a bit, deep diving into each one of these concepts. So be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout for future videos. I hope this helps you out, and I hope that it makes sense.